Welcome to our lovely emotional and mental, intelligent, skilled future humans. Those of you who are mystics, those of you who are spiritual, those of you who are mindful. If you are new, then you don't know what I'm talking about, but let me share with you all as we began our day with a lovely conversation. So that might help. Emotionally and mentally intelligent people. We do not do any of taking advice from those who suffer life. We also do not think we're going to talk sense to any of them because, as our lovely Bezel van der Kolk points out, people do not necessarily have the capacity to own that which is their nervous system. And the way he poses it is that regulated self or dysregulated self, you don't actually come to feel it. The automatic behaviors, that's where therapists help anyone who wants to become clear in their mind to do that. And then we have the emotionally and mentally intelligent individuals who will be here at IHP because they like to be their self, they're securely attached, and they're non-traumatized because they work with the right and the left. And so I'm going to share some mystic stories though. And so woo pseudoscience is great. And if you want, you can tune into the episode later on. It's about 20-ish minutes. I'll let you see the link either below in the description box, or I'll put one of those videos at the end or the beginning. So let me read just 1 minute. Bezel, as he points out, you don't talk people into or out of intense emotions. And we mentioned that is called effective realism. So when people are aware of their emotions and finally they're not supporting, they're not endorsing their likes or dislikes, okay, the in and out group, that's when they're going to be functional child adults. And we enjoy to have common sense. We also enjoy to know, as empowered feminines do, that's all people. The empowered feminine is when your body is in its connectedness, so the ventral vagal state, that we can try to talk sense to our friends and tell, hey, that woman or that man, not really good for you. Okay, so we're going to get to my facade friends story, but please remember that people who are motivated by wanting to belong, it's because they have a habitual brain, their default mode network, that is helpless, hopeless, emotionally vulnerable, insecure, and immature. And as Dr. Amy Pegan points out, that is neuroception, and it isn't their motivation, and it isn't their capacity to have, she uses a word that it's not, no, motivation, willpower. She says it's not about willpower. So first you get to a good therapist, you get your emotional body online, you own your inner child, you reparent your inner child with someone like Patrick Chan, EMDR, chop arts with somatics, and then like Dr. Amy Pegan points out, that even after years of therapy, people will still be working to consistently bring forth, by their own choosing, that which is their ventral vagal state. And that's why Patrick Chan, I really enjoy, as he points out, how to work with your past as it comes up and not project it. So one of the examples he gives of projection, I'll give you two, is a man, he says in a shower, or someone, not a man per se, but the way it goes is, if Bill looks at me one more time, I'm going to beat him up. Or people who are driving and they yell at other people. So that's where you can practice, if you want, self-regulation. And that's for the people who are motivating themselves to actually want to harness the good stress. So ventral energy and eustress, it's called, is when, if I'm getting irritated, I'm aware, and as a mindfully aware person, I'm also in that 8th and 9th chakra that we're expanding, remember? And with my lovely life, I get to have the honor to tell you I'm a differentiated self since I was 3 years of age. I'm led with my lovely little self-agency butthole. My trauma time comes up with my mom and my twin, and so I keep working on those manners there. And then with others, I have learned, thanks to some of the stories I'll share with you all, how to tend to my 0-1-year-old. So if she cries, she's good because Maria gets to take care of that. Panic attacks gave me a lot of practice, and so do all people who don't care to be complete, open-hearted 0-3-year-olds with me. So as long as you don't own the 0-1, attached, panicky, you don't know how to self-soothe in a healthy way. And I'll know, because you will lack the capacity to be soft and to be cuddly and to be a person who consistently like a child will smile, okay? So playground. And that's with all the fuzziness of like a teddy bear. Imagine a teddy bear and a child hugging a teddy bear. And then rainbows and sunshines, which is what we get to live inside our brains, especially when you are, again, an empowered feminine. So my 0-1-year-old, she's tended to by Maria. And that's here and here and here. And then obviously I get hugs from my loved ones. If I just say, hey, I want a hug today. And the hug is the best thing that you could ever give. And it's also sweet tones. So yeah, the 0-8-year-olds that are ruled by the grown-ups, like Dr. Daniel Siegel pointed out in one of my classes on when you own the self and you don't change, it's because you're a verb. And like also one of my favorite books, The Art of Loving of Eric Fromm, love is a verb. And you consistently love more. And that doesn't mean you're friends with all people because, okay, so when we meet those who are not looking to have the results of inner well-being, they're not looking to be self-empowered or sovereign the way I was just talking about. So they're not looking to be sweet 0-3-year-olds of themselves. They're looking to have support, validation, and pats on the back. Their emotional subconscious, the 0-8-year-old, is what rules them. So they're going to, if Bill doesn't look at me one more time, support that self-righteous control and say, nope, this is the way you feel feelings. No, that's a very immature way to feel feelings, and you're using distress and you're not using what could be equanimity. And when a person doesn't want to do calm and centeredness or move into more of emotional intelligence, that's why they don't move into compassion, and they will stay modulated in that embodiment, and they will justify, so they'll do it again the next day. I bill, and they continue to repeat the maladaptive pattern of behavior, which is a projection, as Patrick Chan would point out, and they don't reparent and then actually learn to disengage from that unhealthy self-soothing mechanism, because it's unhealthy due to it using your modulated embodiment. The other example Patrick Chan gives is this one, two people walk into a supermarket and the cashier's looking their way and they're like, look at that. They looked at me, what a bitch, something like that. I don't think he curses, but it was around the gist of that. And I have, for example, plenty of women that I remember, they're like, God, they're looking at me. You don't know if they're looking at you. Men too. Why are you looking at me like that? I was not looking at you like anything. Okay, so when people don't notice their own low self-esteem and then their own assumptions and their own, which is the fight response, by the way, they're making stories up. Like Terry would point out, there's a aspect of creating a story inside your head. And you'll notice how those who are Cuscos continue to, that's why, again, ostrich with the head in the sand, adaptive child part people justify their likes and their dislikes. And that's exactly why they're self-serving. So all of what they bring to a picture is not clear of mind. I can't go to somebody who lacks the capacity to hold humanity's best interest, because you're biased only based on what you like or don't like versus based on what is. In this case, here's where common good ethics is not about what you like or don't like based on your cultural preference, based on your sexual preference, based on any of your preference. Your preference doesn't matter. Your preference is your subjective preference. What is the good of the world? So, for example, we have laws, and then we go vote, and then we have the capacity to continue to have sciences do research to help. So the sciences community, I am very appreciative of all academia, because we have quantitative and qualitative research, and those are the ones who have, as our species evolves, continue to make a difference for that which we need. That doesn't disprove God or our traditional stuff, no, and in fact today they're coming together. So a lot of that which is from our spiritual tradition matches and comes together with science. And science, there are areas that they continue to show are not needing to be, for example, epilepsy. They found out it's not the wrath of the gods. Or demonic possession. There is not demonic possession. And as a mystic, this is one of the things for the spiritual influence that we've been talking about, ethics. Yes, when I explain to people, Patrick McNamara is looking into shamanic brain, spiritual brain, the religious self, and explains how the brain works. And then I have a bunch of therapists who also explain to me, neuroscientists, neurobiologists, how the embodied brain works, and I can explain to you what happens to a 3-year-old and the fragmented state of self, and you want to continue with your story, well, you have no ethics. I have a story, I want it to be my story, and I'm going to keep moving forward with it. That's the people who are in our 3D 4D collective, who don't welcome the information of that which is how an embodied brain works. Okay, so when someone tells me energy vampire, I've said, look, there's not an energy vampire. And I recently had this conversation. It's a person who obviously there's a lot more going on, and the way you're telling me what you're doing, okay, I see that you can benefit from an attachment, either category or style therapist, so that you can learn to own the sense of self, recalibrate however it is your own nervous system once you are finally earned secure attachment, and that's as a monoamory or polyamory, it doesn't matter. Okay, now that you own the sense of self, you've reparented, you're aware of every single bit of you, and you have self-love, self-care, and self-empowerment, you know, inner and out wellness, now you can begin to go and have a good time, because you know what it is to have healthy boundaries and how to speak with discerning, equanimous, loving tone for yourself. That is where you're going to find the mystics, spiritual, mindful 5D collective, while 43D continue to actually watch their backs and not notice that they are following those who are not about the common good, but they have a specific dogma, belief, a specific set of 10, 20, 30 things that fit the likes and dislikes of that which is called an adaptive child part person with their group, like the Flat Earthers. Or a Zen master who allows himself to call himself Zen master. He has laundry, and so he's bringing forth that philosophy of life is suffering. And so the whole group that follows that Zen master continue to use their temporal junction instead of using their prefrontal cortex and learning how, yeah, I cry, it's not suffering though. Okay, so at IHP, Inspiring Human Potential, we have emotionally and mentally intelligent people. And so we don't look to Cuscos for any advice because their biases are completely clear to us. What you like and don't like, it's self-serving. You also change your mind because they're inconsistent. And you change your mind based on your mood. You lack the capacity to stay accountable and to notice how to self-regulate in a healthy way in moments of stress. You're not choosing to use healthy methodologies to harness your emotional, mental, and physical plane. You're not wanting to be the best version of yourself. You just want to use your mouth and talk. And then you want to use your little self-righteous energy or whatever low frequencies coming up. That's why Patrick Tian, he calls them half-safe people. And they're not half-safe, but they definitely aren't reliable. You can't rely on people who change their mind based on their emotions, and you can't rely on people who don't own their subconscious. And it's very clear when they don't, because their 16-year-old is ruling with a very specific group who has an agenda, which is exactly why they can wield their mouths however they wish. When you know what common sense is and what the common good is, you're going to know how it works to be in the land of truth, because that's the prefrontal cortex. And I'm going to read to you some quotes. One is our lovely Sadhguru. Only when you are in absolute tune with existence do you know it the way it is. Otherwise, you know it the way your mind interprets it. And that's why adaptive child part people, we notice them. They're harsh, unforgiving. They don't learn new skills. They see in black and white. They have a list of why they're right, you're wrong. They're not even in the room with you. They're playing out. There's your 8-year-old on a wheelhouse, and they, in fact, will make up a story. They won't notice that automatic behavior, like Bezel van der Rohe points out. I'm going to bring in my adaptive child part friend in a minute. And so, as physicist Thomas Campbell points out, though, the truth is not fragile. It will always float to the top, even if sometimes it takes a while before it can be welcomed. So universally accepted concepts, if you will. Okay, and then we will also have the definition so you can hear what a spiritual master, a guru, which is AKA a human being who is securely attached, non-traumatized, they're emotionally regulating consistently with their likes, dislikes, biases, and putting that to the side. And so because they own their sense of self and they're leading with meaning and connection beyond their solo self, it's not self-serving of one group, It's not self-serving in a way of my likes or dislikes or preferences. It's what's the common good. Well, number one, we need air, water, and food. Number two, every single person wants to be seen. Obviously, that's where it gets very intricate, since our subjective realities, and then we have different cultures. So when we look at a globe entirely, okay, so we know there's a multitude of layers, which is why true leadership is not about who's the loudest. True leadership is a discerning, equanimous, loving mind, and they're always out there. And because they are not the loudest of the block, but they are the smartest ones. Now, they're smarter than the average bear, yes, because emotional intelligence is what they have, which means their ego isn't small. And so it doesn't need to have right or wrong, because it doesn't give two shits about what right or wrong is, because that's a small, right here, you'll feel it. I don't have to be right or wrong. I'm just Maria, you're just you. That's how it works when you have a self-led, so your higher self, and you're able to, again, notice like the little fly that came near my ear. So you don't fall for the buzzards that are around you, and you don't blame a demon, devil, Lucifer, dark forces, or whatever. So whenever I'm hearing the spiritual bypassers completely create in and out group, is very straightforward what they do and how they do it. And that's because they think that they're going to, they don't think, that's where that automatic behavior of wanting to save humanity because I know the right way and you know the wrong way, and they'll use the word ethics and beliefs and right and wrong and evil and good. Oh yeah, you can name it how many times I hear those words from people who have an agenda because they have a 0-8-year-old in the lead and they didn't notice that they're not an emotionally mature person yet, and that they are incapable, like my facade friend, of noticing that they think they know everything, when instead you've never walked one day in the shoes of another. You also don't know everything, and to have that which is called self-acceptance and humility with the interest of intellect, and then the interest of that which serves and supports an entire globe, not one aspect that is personal because you experienced something in a very specific way and you want to make sure to prove it and that your way works for everyone. But we all do have a foundation, right? So like I come here to share inspiring human potential based on Maria being a self-led, sovereign person who knows what it is to be in a body that's connected, and for you to be yourself. So I'm still coming at our conversations with a starting point. The difference is I'm aware of it, and I'm not going to say it's right or wrong. I'm going to say that it can work for those who want mental, emotional, and physical intelligence, and then it's going to work for those who are embodying that which is Christ consciousness, oneness consciousness, love, because those are the only people who have any interest in developing their emotional intelligence, because it's fun. As you're the master of your own angry little butthole. You know how fun it is to work with it? My biggest challenge is still my mother, because I was 3 with her. So she gets the brunt of it, in my twin. But that's where we work like a team all the time. We have fun. We talk about all the trauma stuff. My little sister, she's the baby, so she gets to be like the mediator. And that's because, I have a sweet spot. I was 11 when she was around. In fact, every now and then I'm like, poor baby sister. She probably perceived all my 11-year-old-ish. As you know, an 11-year-old is pretty small, and so that's our 11 and 12 is our flight. So it's part of where you would actually feel like, oh, I don't mean anything. Then 14, 15, 16 is the I know everything, and that's actually what leads those people who are their 0-8 quote-unquote mature versions. It's not fascinating. You can spot a Cusco like a hawk if you are an enlightened one, self-empowered one, empowered feminine, empowered masculine, because you spot yourself and you actually do not in any way, shape, or form endorse. You can explain, yes, what comes up, but you don't endorse your irritation, because you remember, at least for those of us who are spiritual again, who God is and who Akash and Source is, and that means you remember that your place amongst your brothers and sisters is that which is of I get to be in the opportunity to expand consciousness and consciously and expand myself and be the best version of me. And it's not a self-image that you're maintaining. It's, why would I ever not be in the physiological state of compassion when you don't represent a physical threat to me? And you're not an authority on anything. You're just another person. I'm not an authority on anything either. There's just a bunch of books, and there's a bunch of words, and there's a bunch of people who want to use the word belief, but I know data proves every brother and sister of mine got the kingdom of God within them. So I'm not afraid of any of those who are scaredy cats. And that's because those who are walled off are scaredy cats, and those who are porous and boundaryless, well, they actually are the ones who are the easiest to be able to say, okay, look, this is how we're going to have to do things. Once you repeat yourself enough times, they're able to recalibrate. So those are codependent type people that I'm talking about. And so a spiritual master, a guru, a yogi, a prophet, an enlightened one, an empowered one, a person who's physiologically in their state of compassion, in the flow state. The flow state is awesome. Selflessness, timelessness, effortlessness, and richness. A neuroscientist explains what happens by the timelessness point. The body's like, where the fuck is the person? And it freaks out in the effortlessness stage a little bit, and then you move into richness, and you're like, wow. And so if you've ever heard of the Satori moment, yes, there's bountiful of them for those who are experiencing life from a body that is in connection. And then you create muis with a bunch of other people, and you continue to do that, and that's because you harness that which is all of that 0-1-year-old attached, no panicking, even though panic attacks are pretty annoying. But again, when you get sad, you can say, hey, Maria, it's okay, and that's it. You don't go and, again, you self-agents, self-sovereign, self-led, compassionate 3-year-old, they're all amazing. If there's any of Cusco, so that means people who have mood swings, you learn their mood swings, and then you just recalibrate. And that's because, again, it's a straightforward equation. The ones who want to take wellness seriously continue to grow gooey, ooey, ooey, and that's because they want access to the entirety of their own 0 to 16 as a grown-up. So they want to be in their fields, and they like the open-hearted stuff. It's really fun. So that's why we get to have a good time. And we also get to care. So we care about bringing that which is rainbows and sunshines. We care to be functional inner child adults, because life's too short. There's 24 hours to be in any kind of grumpy mood. And believe me, I was grumpy bear as a kid, so I know all about grumpiness. I still get grumpy again. I'm still working with my personal growth with my lovely family. And then because my mother taught me manners, I'm pretty much very well versed in not saying something not nice. And that's because she taught me. And then God taught me not to play know-it-all. So when those who are spiritual masters, gurus, yogis, okay, empowered human beings like Dr. Daniel Siegel, he's awesome. A lot of greats are out there. They will not judge somebody based on what they are right now, Dr. Daniel Fox. They will look at what kind of potential every person has, so they'll know who they have in front of them. They will not neglect anyone just because they don't have the necessary capability right now, but that doesn't mean we're going to be friends with everyone. Okay, so let's get to a little bit of story time. Okay, with that being said, I'm going to introduce to you my lovely facade friend. And I'm going to let you know I've known my facade friend, and he's only one of the many masculines in my lifetime. And it's not because he's a man. This is where, when I say masculine, it's going to be the left motors that don't want to get into their empowered masculine with an empowered feminine. That's none of my business, okay? So remember, emotionally immature people, they don't want to do the work. So you're going to have a 0-8-year-old mature level, and they will want only pats on the back, which you won't give them. But because you learn, as I grew up, I learned how to say, look, we can have different beliefs. You can call me all the names of the book you want, but I'm not going to agree with you. I don't have to, and you don't have to agree with me. Are we done? Is this the end of it? Okay, so when someone, you're not ethical, you're not moral, you just leave it alone, because at the end of the day, integrity is about, I won't be ashamed of myself. So Maria is not ashamed of herself because she knows how to handle herself in the presence of any pseudo-intellectual and pseudoscience, spiritual bypasser, and a lot more. And I still am learning, thank you God, how to master myself according to that which is love, and to remember that all my brothers and sisters are this, and they all have a hole in their heart. And if they don't know how to be kind, And I know that they're living the ghosts of their past. I have nothing to do with their curses. And that unfortunate business is that they're disrespecting that which is their own self. And that's because they have attachment wounds flaring up. They don't love themselves first. And there's my facade friend. So I'm going to bring him into the mix. My friend and I, we've known each other since I was about 15, if not 14. And he's always been a selfish asshole. Okay? So adaptive child part people, as therapists will point out, are self-centered. They're likes and dislikes. So one day you're great, one day you're not. One day they're gossiping, one day they're not. This is not something that I consider impressive. It's mediocre. As a 45-year-old woman, I met it in college, I met it in work, I meet it online. I actually spot the YouTubers. They're all over the place. I make fun of all of them because seriously, there's Waldo. I can't help this feeling deep inside of me. So I don't do any of spotlighting because that's mediocre behavior too. I do harness the opportunity. God chimes in, reminding me of these very words. Maria, don't judge your brothers and sisters of human suffering. And it's not because I judge them good or bad. Don't judge them a waste, W-A-S-T-E, of your fucking time. And I'm a grown-up and I'm okay with cursing. And that's because when you consistently know how to be open-hearted and open-minded and open-gutted and in your equanimous discerning, equanimity means humility, you got people who are acting like buffoons. So my facade friend is the reason why I don't yell in anyone's face saying, all I asked was for you to be yourself. And today with Bezo Vanderkolk, I know how to tell you, when I found out why people couldn't be themselves, it confirmed the very thing I told God by the time I'm 20. Hey God, so I haven't met Lucifer, just cowards. And the cloak people, well, they're in the boat with them because they're hurting children and human beings. I don't know what's going on, but they don't represent you. I don't know what happened. And when people want to keep on talking about Christian and Christianity and all of that in ways of, again, what the ones who get all picky with their words, I leave it alone because they're the same ones who don't know how to discern wise good judgment or be equanimous, and therefore they don't know how to be their self yet with their grown-up brain. And the ones of us who do, like the Dalai Lama, he made a request and he is an enlightened one. And so any enlightened one will say, okay, buffoons, are you ready to bridge or what? And when you hear the excuses of adaptive child part for why no, it's because of them twisting their words. We're going to allow bad JoJo and Juju because they're using 20, 30, 40, 50 books from yesterday. The conspiracy theorists like to add their conspiracy, all of the ones who are assuming based on a bunch of other conspiracies. And the intellectually intelligent human being right here who knows all about social sciences, humanities, because of my background in a master's degree and more, because of my interest in humanity. I'm like, sure. Everyone can keep talking. When you meet pseudo-intellectuals, you're going to know who they are. And so, like I keep sharing, enlightened ones don't waste their time on any of that, which is the masculines. We don't get tested by anyone. We are completely aware cosmic karmic balance. So when we pray, we don't have to pray to anything because it's one God, it's one energy, it's one source. And we'll recognize the lack of illuminated, enlightening, meaning brained, intelligent, spiritual ones. So spiritual bypassers, they have a role, 4D, 3D has a role, and that's because as a person who understands how human embodied brain works, if you don't own your 0-8-year-old, then that means that, like my facade friend, you have attachment wounds, rejection wounds, you have all these things that you have yet to uncover. And as Bezo Vanderkolk points out, you can tell somebody, hey, you're being unreasonable, but how many times has that worked? My facade friend, he has an Achilles heel. I mentioned it to him. And when I mentioned it to him, he actually allowed himself not only to lie to me, but to hide it, and then to continue behaving like self-serving adaptive child part people do. So based on their own emotional and mental needs and wants and da-da-da-da. And so here's where, are we all self-serving? Of course we are. The difference is those who are self-empowered don't choose to befriend others based on I want a give or take in a very specific way. So you don't irritate me to the extent of where I can't accept that we're going to have different ways of behaving, believing, da da da. Okay, so once you're a mentally, emotionally mature person, you're not going to be counting on your fingers how many times someone calls you, how much they don't, how much like all of these very uninteresting things as you get older, because obviously as a kid that's a whole different story. You're still learning how to move beyond that black and white thinking. But once you have, by the time I was 20, I began to see the gray and the colors, okay, and I began to know how not to say never. And so you slowly mature in all these areas, and that's as a self-sovereign authority. And so my facade friend is the last time I ever actually, and he's the only one. I didn't talk to him for a whole 5 years, and he was in my little hate box. I had a little hate box, and I don't use hate. It's a very strong word, and in fact, in those moments, I had 2 people in my hate box. I told God, I said, hey God, I know hate is a bad thing, and I don't really hate them, but I'm really angry, so I'm going to keep them here for now, and when I'm ready, I'll revisit it. And I actually closed both of them out in different timings. And that's where my friend, what happened to him was not only after everything that I had told him, so again, we don't talk about 5 years. There's one moment in these 5 years where I'm at a funeral and I didn't block them, because that's really petty. When people block each other, I find it petty, but that's because Maria knows how to speak up for herself. So if I don't like something, I'll tell you what I think. I don't have to block you. If you're not a physical threat to me, I don't need to do anything, and my body will alert me. Also, people are always a potential risk. This is unfortunate business. So I live under the sky. The roof could fall on me. I mean, really. The other thing is I have a good gut. I trust my own gut, and that's where it is at. And so you always want to remember, strangers are strangers, right? So you kind of do the wiggle room dance, and then we hope that we all can trust each other slowly over time. The more people get securely attached, own their sense of self, get out of, the 0-8-year-old being what rules them. So when people don't own their nervous system and their embodied brain, that's where I've learned what fragmented states of self look like and how you can pick it up from all my courses. And that's because I'm around a lot of different types of people that I know what it is. You will immediately recognize if someone's switching the state of self. You'll recognize if something's off. You'll recognize once you have enough experiences with please appeasers, you know who they are. You'll know what hostile, doomsdayer, doer, are we good, ghost are. These are childhood trauma survivor personality types. You'll know the shame submissive and the attached criers. So yeah, these states of self and these charges are all very perceivable by those of us who are not only attachment trauma educated, but are empaths, somatic empaths. So the somatic narrative is always what's ruling everyone, which is why we don't really pay attention to the words. As you gain experience, you remember that the words of a person isn't what's going to show me who you are. Your behavior will. So my friend stayed the same asshole he was. He didn't heal any of his attachment or trauma wounds or any of that stuff. He completely lives a life like any of the other people who are living out their emotionally immature selves. And that's why they're completely mediocre and uninteresting from an intellectual perspective when it comes to taking a look at humanity and where we're headed and an analysis. So for example, when it comes to marketing or entrepreneurship or environment or any of it, if you are of a certain level of, again, openness, you will know who the intellectuals and true leaders are, and then you'll know the ones who are smoke and mirrors, because, oh, by the way, so consciousness, if you remember, it's in consistent evolution. It consistently learns more and loves to blossom. The fear element that people think can be completely gotten rid of, it's funny because recently I've been thinking about that and how to bring it to you. And one, your body has fear because it protects you from dark matter, dark energy potentially imploding, right? So if we didn't have fear, we wouldn't be motivated to keep ourselves physically safe, which would then mean that what are we doing as people? Okay, so remember, personal spiritual growth, we're not talking about any of other topics. Maria is focusing on when we're in our own heads, just so that you can remember the focus is not topics that are like aliens or politics or any of that. Okay, so my stories serve for you to understand how in your day-to-day interaction you can bring your best foot forward, and how your entire oversoul with your immediate to then the earth to then beyond, but we're sticking to the immediate for now. Okay, so my facade friend, we become friends again because life will continue to try to get you to be your conscious self. And that's where, when you look at sciences like that man that I mentioned, where is he? Thomas Campbell, and I'm mentioning him because he is science, so he's a physicist, and his law of everything. I didn't read the book, I don't have the book, but his interview shared with me how enlightened he is. And as he points out, love is the point of low entropy, and it is lowering entropy that will create health, sharing, and positivity, while grabbing, being selfish, that's high entropy and negative. And so you'll find that all of those who are enlightening will talk to you about love, but the love that they will bring to you will be of the equanimous, calm-centered, discerning type. The ones who bring to you their feisty little fists, they are self-serving in that way of being attached to what worked for them, and what they're going to do is just create a group. But we still have, to this day, in the year 2025, a group of people who don't bring their children to hospitals. So people who close themselves off into limited consciousness, they are not welcoming of bringing it all in, but furthermore, they also are not welcoming of doing something called bringing their health in the way of mastering anger. So mastering irritation, mastering sadness, mastering fear with this, which is this prefrontal cortex. There's modulated embodiment around, and I'm going to bring my friend in again. And as we became friends again, because he, got everything that he had was taken from him. So my friend got basically left without a reason. His business failed, and he had no friends, because one friend alone he had, and that's not really a friend. The same friend was the one who told me what was going on with my friend, which was he was at home throwing up. And I was like, why aren't you inviting him to come out with us? No, he doesn't want to. The minute I called my friend up, he came out, and I saw the two of them. We were out dancing as they behaved like little roosters. And they actually even went ahead to be what I considered, wow, that's completely unfascinating, but I'm not going to judge it either. I don't care what you do. You can share the same woman. You can do whatever you want. I mean, but it was the part about his friend when I asked him, why aren't you inviting him out? And he's like, no, he doesn't want to. His friend lied. So when I saw them acting like roosters, I'm like, what kind of a friendship is this? Not a friendship. Your ego competing. And then you're also sharing, like, that doesn't, I don't even know what to say anymore. No, I mean, it was really nothing, because I don't understand it, but today I know what insecure people do. And that's why it's not interesting to be around men or women or theys who are not securely attached. So for example, with the polyamory community, we've talked about it. There's not only a polyfidelity vessel, which is really awesome. And I love how people who are not polyamorous like to chime in and give their 2 cents. And it's like, okay. But when I read the book, the beginning, I haven't finished it, Polywise. I finished the book Polysecure, which is really good. But Polywise, when I began it and found out that there's polyamory, people will say, you're not poly enough. I'm like, wow, okay, that's not cool at all. Like, what is this? But that's because that's what insecure, not securely attached people do. They are jealous, they're insecure, and it's petty behavior. It's not demons or Lucifers. And there's always an answer to what they're thinking, because that's what inner and outer critic, drinking, drugging, fucking, unhealthy self-soothing mechanisms, attachment wounds, rejection wounds, things that don't get healed by the people. So bringing in my facade friend again, as that stuff goes on again, he then lies to me. I don't talk to him for a whole 5 years. I was telling you the part about in the middle of these 5 years, it was 1-2 years, I don't remember. I'm at a funeral and I get a message, "Are you happy now?" And I say, "Happy about what?" "She's cheating on me." And I was like, I don't get happy about people's misery, and I and you are not on taking basis, so what do you want from me? And no, I'm not happy. I'm sorry for you. Okay, so that's called passive aggressive, and that's really, to me, again, buffoonery. That's why I call them all Cuscos. Okay, so you can use this same story, because I have plenty more, one of which, this I'll never forget. And this is because, and I'm going to change up the specs just to respect that which is when people don't know what's coming out of their mouth. If you and I are friends, you know what, I'm going to do something better. Instead of talking about it, I'm just going to use, there's an Italian or a Neapolitan saying, I don't know if it's all of Italy or just Naples. I learned it as a teenager, and I wondered about it immediately. And it was, don't ask someone what you look like, because they'll never tell you you look better than them. And I'm like, why would someone who loves you not tell you what's good for you? Like, why would they continuously to be envious and jealous? Okay, so when you understand what emotionally immature people are, they're all insecure. And people can bring into your culture, like my teenage boyfriend and I, as I'm like, look, I'm not jealous. All these people, your culture, I got it. I'm bicultural, and I'm not an insecure woman, and I won't be ever jealous of losing. I can't lose you. If you don't like me, you won't like me. I'll get over it. It'll be fine. And so we went on for 4 years where every time there was cheating, I was like, I'm not jealous. Nothing's changed. We're young. Things happen. And when people want to judge the relationship, again, why are you judging? All of us can make mistakes and are immature, and people want to share their 2 cents, because obviously that's what we do. But on my end, cowardice and immaturity are not judged, because I'm not God and I'm flawed. And like Jesus, I promised to forgive. That's the whole point. I promised something, and I kept my promise, and I keep it. So someone could say, you're doing it because you're self-serving, and I'll be like, sure, fine. That's, to me, if you want to have a reason for why I can consistently commit to forgiving, to turning the other cheek, yeah, I'm honored to carry on what I promised as a kid. And it's not about, being perfect or the best of anything. It's that this is what it means to have a clear conscience. Because humanly speaking, any person, if you have access to the entirety of you, which means your child parts, you will want to tend the other cheek, and you will not leave any of your brothers or sisters to hang and dry. So when my facade friend is in the shithole, I wasn't talking to him. The last interaction we had was that, and whenever I have seen him, at that time, I didn't talk to him. There's 2 or 3 times where I got to see him with the person. He's like a ghost, or I was like, he's not there. And I even got called petty because I didn't accept the friend request, which I said, yeah, I'm not going to accept one from them because they were a true friend. They went and disrespected our friendship. And in this entire interaction, I also got to hear about accepting friend requests from people who talked behind my back, which I already knew about. Okay, so this is, to me, all petty behavior. And when you get attachment trauma educated, it continues to be petty behavior, but it has a solution and answer. And there's where I love Terry Real. He makes any man or woman a real man or woman, or they. Securely attached people are awesome to be around. As for the ones who are petty, they're going to be petty. You're not going to judge a petty, poor human being, because obviously it's very straightforward why they're not getting their shit together. Like my facade friend, it's called insecurity. And then it's called continuously allowing themselves to talk over other people, like my friend continues to do, and then continue to half-ass it at life. And that's because they're not taking ownership, though, of that 0-1-year-old and that 3 to 7-year-old. So, and this is the basic, good deal for groups of people like my facade friend. But then we have people who have stuff that we don't even know what happened to them, which is completely beyond a shadow of a doubt heartbreaking. When you hear about a parent or more locking their children up, not giving them food, getting them to come out in the morning and pretending with these kids that they had food and they're starving. So, the ones who don't get all attachment trauma educated, that's why when it comes to spiritual influence, the ones who want to maintain any kind of form of ethics, they better get attachment trauma educated and then realize there's no Lucifer in the heads of anyone. There's one thing for sure, there's a bunch of people who could use help, and then we have a bunch of parts of the world where we know They have not the capacity to be in their ventral vagal state, which is a whole other equation, which I got the honor to talk about in one of our lives. I have a lovely person who a couple of times chimed in, and they're like, some people can't do this, Maria. It's like, I know, and every one of the people in my courses asked all these therapists that we work with and that we learn from, how do we get to the places that don't have it? How do we get? So people who care to this day are trying to allow themselves to bring somatic experiences with the smart neuroscientists, neurobiologists, not on their own, not the shaman who says, come to me, I will heal you from, no, not that one. Those ones actually are the ones who are not maintaining what I'm going to say is their care for humanity. I'm a shaman, come to me. So their ego's involved. Because there's no need for them to say, I will heal you and you won't need therapy. They can just say, here, I promise you transformational experiences. They don't have to bring in the therapy thing. They're not competing. They're two different professions. And then when you hear people, though, wanting to call the spiritual ones charlatans and predators and all that, or guru is a cult, no, it's not. It's only going to be someone who falls for a cult because they didn't go and get themselves help, and they don't have a good gut because they weren't raised with a environment that they got a good gut. So they lack the capacity to be aware of what is true leadership, because in fact, it's very clear to notice what those who enmesh and lack sense of self do. They will actually be very clear to people that are, again, with the... So let me put that aside as we have a little bit more storytelling time before I let you go. And so, yeah, my facade friend, as we become friends again, they say, I don't know how you do this, as I'm allowing them back into my circle. And I said, do what? Be a good friend. And that is where 3 years after we're friends again, I catch them talking about not believing in God, not believing in source, not believing in mysticism, not believing in anything. And for the entire 3 years of our friendship, again, I'm telling them about all these significant, important things that are happening, and they think that it's all buffoonery. So I get in their face, and that's when I see their blank stare, and that's when I realize he doesn't know what the fuck he's done. And then in the years that I got attachment trauma educated, I now know what people are when they're pretending, performing. So Cusco has a mask. And that's why it's not petty in the sense of I won't be your friend. It's okay. Now that I learned your 5 hands, I know I got a buffoon in front of me, but hey, you want to be that buffoon? I'm not going to tell you what to do in your life. I'm not God, and you're yourself. And you don't talk sense to a person, because that's the whole point. My friend, the last conversation we had where they were being gifted another opportunity to expand, they chose not to. Because they chose not to take a leap of faith, one with themselves, but they also disregarded completely their lack of self-esteem, lack of self-accountability, lack of self-regulation, lack of bringing their emotional plane and mental plane to a level of maturity. And I can bring to you a bunch more of stories if I wanted to, but I won't, because they're all the same, and it's people who irritate. They don't irritate us. Once you get 1 and 2 and 3, you feel sad for them because they're really not living their entirety. But it's not really something for me to be sad about, because they were presented, and they will always be. So people, as long as they're living, they're going to be presented the opportunity to have faith in themselves, faith in humanity, and then with science or spirituality, doesn't matter, know that tomorrow is not gifted necessarily, but that as long as it is, you leave behind something of great when you get to be the best version of yourself. And that is not going to be when you have taintedness from your irritable 3-year-old with your biases of likes and dislikes and your usage of words just because you can use them, but then you don't notice what the common good for all is, and you want to bring forth some type of conversation like better. My facade friend, as always, he likes to do these things. And there was one moment where he's like, it almost seems like you think that you know what's right, as I'm talking to him about something very important. And I said, it's not that it's about right. It's about there being love and there being a specific way that. So I was opening up the opportunity to another individual, and my friend was criticizing my thinking that I was the right choice. And I was trying to explain to him it's not about right or wrong choice, it's about love, and it's about something that's potential and growing, and it's also about being able to bring to full circle, for example. So if there's one thing that adapted child part people don't ever do is notice what they are bringing to the table, and they also don't take ownership of their actual lack of compassionate mannerisms and their lack of capacity to show it. Stephen Porges explains they don't choose it on purpose. They don't have room for you. They're self-serving because they have not the capacity to give complete love to all of themselves. They have shadow parts, they have wounds, they have a bunch of things they haven't welcomed, and so they don't accept that they're flawed and imperfect with unconditional love, so they won't be able to, of course, welcome you with that level of innocence and that level also of awareness, because you don't remain ignorant of there being this bad in the world. And I do it this way because, I want air, water, and food to be protected. I believe every single bit of ignorance is bad for all of the globe, and that's where long-term thinking and bigger shot thinking is not going to be reductive, as only an individual who doesn't understand what a globe is, okay, and what you need to breathe in the morning. And the ones who want to go down the conspiracy path, again, they're completely people who use their mouths in ways that are of uninterest. But when you meet the academics, that's where I appreciate all of them who do the work they do, because they are always going to come together. But what I'm talking about is social time. People who just chit chat, and at the same time, I do forget that we have different soul age groups, so they all have their own journey, and that's why it's a very, very in-depth conversation. If I wanted to bring to you all of the different aspects, not only from the human elements, so a person, and then the spiritual ones with all these soul age groups. And then when it comes to, if you want to bring in God, Source, Akash, and this cosmic karmic balancing, what I can tell, and the Akashic records, right? Okay, so every person has a place they start from. And it's just amazing. It's an entire world. But for sciences, obviously it's BS. So they'll talk about it with mathematics in the forefront. I talk about it with the spiritual pseudoscience stuff. But let me close it out with the most important key component to all of what we're talking about is that if you're mentally, emotionally intelligent, you will have access to the entirety of you, and then you will know that every single one of the members of your oversoul will give you one of two opportunities. As lovely Sadhguru teaches us in his inner engineering course, now that you've gone through the whole thing, he says, you have the opportunity to respond and be responsible versus reactive. And in this moment, there's a dude who's like, but I didn't have the lady fall on the floor, because he's giving us an example of us going to go lift the person off the floor. And this is the part of where people who are in insecure egos, they will always have a way to not understand how to respond. And the man argued with him. He 3 times he interjected with, I didn't make her fall, it's not my responsibility, because Sadhguru was using the word responsibility. What he was trying to say is that you're humanly speaking, if she's on the floor, you're going to want to lift her up. And I said, like, for me as a woman, if it were a man, maybe I wouldn't, maybe I'd be afraid. Would that make me right? No, it wouldn't. Obviously, it would be shitty of me not to pick them up from the floor, but I would be able to say I'm afraid. Doesn't mean I would say, you need to tell me that I did a good job or a bad job. Okay, so empowered people can take responsibility for why they wouldn't respond, and then they can allow themselves to bridge those differences and the gaps and say, yeah, we all will hope that we can get our asses together, and make it to tomorrow. And that's why the empowered people want to be around more of the ones who know that anytime we come together, when there is no envy, jealousy, comparison, and competition within us, we can focus on the full capabilities of doing what is needed. I paraphrase Sadhguru. Empowered, enlightening people. Those are the people who are securely attached, non-traumatized, and they're intelligent, emotionally, mentally, and so their pettiness, whatever irritates them, likes, dislikes, makes them sad, makes them afraid, we know how to take a look at that and work with it, and then to continue moving forward, hoping and praying and wishing that there's always tomorrow. So with that being said, thanks for stopping by. I do have plenty more stories. We'll have a lot, and like, share, and subscribe, and share the channel with those who you do know enjoy being their self and doing personal and spiritual growth. In the meantime, have a great day.